Musician, arranger, engineer, producer, record label owner, Oswald Ossie Hibbert, also nicknamed No Go Hibbert, is one of the unsung heroes of Jamaican music, particularly in the 1970s, who, despite an over 40-year career in the music, ending only with his death in 2012, never quite got the acclaim due to him, never achieved name brand recognition, particularly for his productions, which, due to some of the realities of the Jamaican music business, were claimed by others or were scattered across a variety of labels. Sometimes he wasn't credited at all, yet a scan of his career reveals a significant contribution to Jamaican music and a number of major hits included therein that can be attributed to him. By the numbers, according to Discogs, he has 194 credits as a musician for instruments and performance only, 122 for writing and arrangements, 59 for technical, engineering, mixing, post-production, and 260 as a producer. The real tally will be much higher, as not all of his work was credited to him. He was born January 16th, 1951 in Jonestown, Kingston, Jamaica. His father played guitar for fun, and his mother took him for piano lessons as a child. He would stick with piano and keyboards as his instrument for the rest of his life. Began to get more and more fascinated with music. By 11 or 12, he was attending sound system dances, those of Coxsone Downbeat's number 2 set, and another sound called Lord Naya, based in neighboring Trenchtown. Plenty of musicians and artists around the area that he would begin to get to know. In the late 1960s, in his teens, he began to play in various bands, one called the Stables Band and an early incarnation of the Soul Syndicate, and began to sit in on recording sessions. According to one account, he was brought for a tryout at Studio One, where he played keyboards on about 30 rhythm tracks, including Dennis Brown's first big hit, No Man is an Island. When he went back for his pay, he was told it was only a tryout. He was working for free. Nonetheless, he went back and contributed to some more rhythms, and then began looking elsewhere for work. Began working with producers like Sonia Pottinger, Niney the Observer, and particularly Bunny Lee, as a member of Lee's session band, The Aggravators. And it would be producer Keith Hudson that would give Ossie Hibbert his big break, playing keyboards on a record by Big Youth that would establish the career of Big Youth himself. Keith Hudson, and launch a craze for motorcycle-themed DJ records. That was 1972's S90 Skank, spelled Ace 90 Skank here. Ossie Hibbert played keyboards on that, a big smash hit in 1972, and this began to add to his reputation. He became more sought after as a keyboard player, continuing to rack up credits for Bunny Lee, appearing on albums such as Johnny Clark's None Shall Escape the Judgment, his debut for Bunny Lee, organ by Ossie Bongo, alias No Go. That is Ossie Hibbert. Many different nicknames, many different spellings of those names on these Jamaican pressings. And it would be through Bunny Lee that Ossie Hibbert would get his next big break. In the Mid-1970s, Channel 1 Studio was just getting off the ground and had scored a smash hit with the Mighty Diamonds and Right Time, which launched the rockers phase of the music, pioneered by Channel 1 Studio. And they were building their team, looking to gear up production, capitalize on that smash hit. And through Bunny Lee, they would send word that they were looking for a keyboard player and wanted Ossie Hibbert to come and play for them. Bunny Lee sought out Ossie Hibbert, told him to go down to Channel 1 Studio and check out the Hookham brothers, who owned and ran it. Jojo Hookham, the boss there, placed Ossie Hibbert in the house band they were building, the Revolutionaries, which would pioneer that rockers sound in reggae music. And Ossie Hibbert would become one of the key members of the Revolutionaries, playing on further tracks by the Mighty Diamonds, keyboards, Ansel Collins and Ossie Hibbert. He's also on the dub versions, Vital Dub, Well Charged, Big Joe, Keep on Rocking and Swing, just to show a few that he plays on as musician. There were also 2 albums where Bunny Lee's Aggravators met the Revolutionaries for some lightly dubbed up instrumental albums. Of course, fairly fluid musical personnel between the 2 groups anyway. Aggravators meet the Revolutionaries at Channel 1 Studio with a suitably combative cover befitting the name The Revolutionaries. And Ossie Hibbert, spelled like an Australian here, credited on piano. He's also on the 2nd volume, Aggravators Meet the Revolutionaries Part 2, organ, Ossie Bongo, alias No Go. Also on Herb Dub by Jaw Lloyd and many others. That's just a few that he appears on strictly as a musician. However, he was beginning to expand his skills and repertoire. Ernest Hookham, brother of Jojo, who handled a lot of the mixing and engineering at Channel 1, would teach him how to engineer and arrange songs. The first one that he would do would be an instrumental by the Revolutionaries called MPLA, the first track on an album called Revolutionary Sounds, one of many kind of instrumental dub albums put out by the Revolutionaries in the mid-1970s. Someone's cut the center hole out there, but famous cover with the image of Che Guevara on the front. The Revolutionaries playing up their name with these very, very politically titled instrumental tracks: MPLA, Leftist, Angola, IRA, and many others. And MPLA, the first track on here, would be one that would be arranged and engineered by Ossie Hibbert. It's worth noting that in Jamaican music, the role of the producer can differ quite a bit from that in rock. In rock, the producer works with the artists to realize their musical vision while delivering a final marketable product to the record label. In Jamaican music, more often than not, the producer is the record label, simply footing the bills and releasing the finished product on their labels, while the actual hands-on production work is carried out by the musicians, usually with one key member acting as a sort of foreman, organizing the sessions, directing the musicians what to play. And Ossie Hibbert would become one of those key personnel at Channel 1 Studio. Eventually, though, he would begin to branch out into production as well. In 1974, he would co-found the short-lived Hound Dog label with Pat Scabba Sutherland, and would record up-and-coming singer called Rod Taylor. Ossie Hibbert had heard Rod Taylor sing at a club, a talent show kind of thing. There were some other musicians there as well. Earl Zero was in the audience. Ossie was impressed by the singer Rod Taylor and asked him to come down to Channel 1 Studio. There, they recorded Bad Man Comes and Goes, released around 1975 on the Hound Dog label, recorded at Channel 1, and that was the very first record by Rod Taylor, launching a career that continues to this day. The DJ Dillinger was also in the studio that day, thought the Rod Taylor song was wicked, and asked to have a go at it. He did his DJ version called Chucky No Chuck It, with one of his most gripping opening lines: Jamaica, land of wood and water, now become motor vehicle and manslaughter. That, for some reason, would appear on the Mummy label, with production credited to Buster Riley, brother of Winston Riley, in kind of a deal between him and Ossie Hibbert, but can perhaps be more rightly attributed for production to Ossie Hibbert, who was recording it right alongside the original Rod Taylor version, and you can hear a bit of Rod Taylor's vocal in that song. It would ultimately appear on Dillinger's CB200 album. Production credited to Channel 1, to Joseph Hukim, but Ossie Hibbert credited as engineer, though his role may have been more crucial than that. And indeed, Ossie Hibbert would claim production on a compilation album of Dillinger's a few years later, on which No Chuck It would appear, along with Cocaine in My Brain, a notorious song which was a smash hit for Dillinger, for Channel 1 Studio, even made the charts in the Netherlands, but appeared on a compilation produced by Ossie Hibbert, indicating that perhaps Ossie Hibbert had more to do with the actual production than Joseph Hukim or Channel 1 Studio.
Jamaica, the land of wood and water,
Bad man come,
now becomes motor vehicle and manslaughter. So why did and daughter don't be like John Slaughter, yeah. Yeah, the mother chuck it on the hygiene them. Say you know to chuck it on the virgin them. You know to chuck it on the daughter them. You must live in love and unity. For peace, love and unity is the foundation of any community. So I want each and every one of us.
While continuing to work as a session musician and in-house arranger and producer at Channel 1 Studio, Ossie Hibbert would begin to found his own labels, beginning with Earthquake in 1976. The only example I have of that label is from a few years later, circa 1979, with singer Pat Kelly covering Procol Harum's A Whiter Shade of Pale, Ossie Hibbert production on his label Earthquake, and that's a Lord Shelley's sound system copy. As many others did, Ossie would leverage his time working for hire to barter for tracks that he could produce himself, swap, trade back and forth, either completed tracks, his time as a musician, or for basic instrumental tracks that he could then use for his own productions. And he would begin working with a number of artists, including superstars on the rise, Dennis Brown with Children of Israel, Gregory Isaacs, who recorded a cover of Bob Andy's Sun Shines for Me, produced by Ossie Hibbert, as well as the duo of Clifton Howell and Albert Bailey, known as Earth and Stone, who had a string of hit singles at Channel 1. Ossie Hibbert would begin working with them, still at Channel 1, and record Wicked Dress Back, a further hit song for the duo. As well, he would begin working with Roots heroes Junior Ross and the Spear on songs like Judgment Time and Rastaman Say, seen here on the Ossie label. This is a much later reissue, probably 1990s or early 2000s. The Ossie label with Junior Ross and the Spears, Rastaman Say, Roots Heroes, Junior Ross and the Spears, not heavily recorded, but nearly everything they did record worth hearing. By 1976, Ossie went down to Channel 1 studio. He was impressed with the dub albums that Joe Gibbs' studio was putting out, the African Dub Almighty series, and got the idea to do his own dub album. They told him he had enough rhythm tracks that he could do it. He had a session booked with a client for 10:30 in the morning that one day. He got there at the studio around 6, began mixing side 1 of a dub LP before the work for the client was scheduled to begin, finished up the next side of the LP the next day, and the result would be his first dub album and his first LP probably, called Earthquake Dub. Some early copies of it appeared on the label Earthquake, probably why he named it that. Suitably chaotic cover art with different fonts going on, the lion blowing a trumpet, a microphone, but he would trade this and an album of vocal productions, various artists compilation called United Dreadlocks, to Joe Gibbs. The engineer there, Errol Thompson, was driving a Ford Cortina car, and Ossie Hibbert would trade him these 2 albums for a car. Thus, they would appear as Joe Gibbs productions, appearing on Joe Gibbs' Record Globe, and later pressings of Earthquake Dub would also appear on Joe Gibbs' Record Globe. Seen here, fairly recent reissue. It was also reissued by the Hot Pot label in the early 2000s, I believe, with a rather plainer cover. Earthquake Dub, credited to the Revolutionaries, the Channel 1 house band, but with Ossie Hibbert this time producing and tackling some of the engineering at least. And the vocal album, United Dreadlocks, contains some of the vocal cuts to the dubs. Earthquake Dub, the title track itself, is based off Dennis Brown's Whip Them Jaw, classic from Dennis Brown, apparently produced by Ossie Hibbert. As well, you would have Rastaman Say by Junior Ross and the Spears, which appears on Earthquake Dub as Fletcher's Land, the 3rd track. So Ossie Hibbert beginning to flex his muscle as a producer in his own right, working with a variety of artists, Gregory Isaacs, Dennis Brown, Junior Ross and the Spear, others, Errol Dunkley, Ronnie Davis would soon follow.
Rastaman name come from Zion. Whip them, Lord, whip them, ja 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 ja, whip them.
Ossie Hibbert's first dub album, Earthquake Dub, would appear in the US and the UK, but with the different title of Satisfaction in Dub. Same music, but different cover, different title, even different track names. In the US, it would appear as Satisfaction in Dub on Winston Jones' Flames label through a deal with Ossie Hibbert. Jones would also release a further Ossie Hibbert dub album, the similarly titled Meditation in Dub. That one has just been reissued this year, 2024. And in the UK, Earthquake Dub would also appear as Satisfaction in Dub on the Live and Love label. Music the same, but completely different title and cover. And a further dub album of Ossie Hibbert productions of Revolutionaries tracks at Channel 1, Crucial Dub, misspelled as Crueshal, can be found on the Greensleeves box set, CD box set, Evolution of Dub, Volume 5, along with Earthquake Dub itself, 2 Ossie Hibbert dub albums, Discs 1 and 2, along with Meditation Dub, in Dub, 3 dub albums. There would be a 4th Ossie Hibbert dub album in the 1970s, to my knowledge, and that would be in connection with Gregory Isaacs, whose Set the Children Free had appeared on United Dreadlocks Volume 1. Ossie Hibbert had also produced a cover of Bob Andy's Sun Shines for Me, voiced by Gregory Isaacs. In 1977, Gregory would release his acclaimed Mr.Isaacs album, some early copies of which would appear on Ossie Hibbert's Earthquake label, indicating a certain level of involvement from Ossie Hibbert. Certainly, some of the tracks appeared through labels associated with Hibbert. This copy, a Canadian pressing on Micron, although most sources have it as a Gregory Isaacs self-production. Ossie certainly involved in playing, in engineering some of the tracks. The 2000s Blood and Fire reissue from 2001 of Mr. Isaacs goes full ahead and calls Ossie Hibbert the producer of the album. That might be taking it a notch too far, but he is credited as producer on the 12-inch single of Mr. Know-It-All, produced by Ossie Hibbert, though Lloyd Campbell was also involved in production on that one. Blood and Fire 12-inch reissue, backed with Ossie Hibbert and the Revolutionaries, War of the Stars. The Mr. Isaacs album was an acclaimed one from Gregory, showing a more reflective, serious side of the cool ruler, taking a bit of a break from his romantic persona and positioning himself as something of a spokesman for the ghetto, ruminating on past history, but voicing it in a very personal and direct way. Track 1, Sacrifice, the very first words you hear from Gregory Isaacs on this album are when he says, "I was taken as a sacrifice to build a black man's hell and a white man's paradise." Further sides like Storm would be much versioned as Gregory Isaacs goes through something of a story going on. All these tracks carefully selected, even the covers of Get Ready and Storybook Children seeming to serve a purpose, with Gregory ending up as the winner and a cover of the Silvertones' Smile. Slave Master, with Gregory threatening to set the plantations on fire, was also DJ'd over by Dillinger as Take a Dip. Some further sides by Gregory Isaacs would appear on a joint LP, Gregory Isaacs meets Ronnie Davis. That includes Mr. Know-It-All, that song that Blood and Fire reissued, as well as the earlier Sunshine for Me, Love Light, all produced by Ossie Hibbert, and side 1, Gregory Isaacs, side 2, Ronnie Davis. This would appear on Joe Gibbs in the US, but on plant music in Canada. Ossie Hibbert productions of Gregory Isaacs and Ronnie Davis in the long reggae tradition of one person meeting another. Really just more likely that there were some tracks left over, about half an LPs each from both, though Gregory and Ronnie were apparently good friends. But that LP, another Ossie Hibbert production that appeared around 1979.
I was given as a sacrifice to build a black mantle and a white man's paradise. But now that I know it's time I've got to go, Lord, the proceedings seem so painful and so slow, slow, slow. The proceedings seem so painful and so slow.
Gregory Isaacs' highly regarded Mr.Isaacs album would be followed up in 1978 with a dub counterpart called Lego Dub, appearing that year on the Cash and Carry label. It's been reissued in the early 2000s on CD, maybe vinyl as well, by the Hot Pot label. Lego Dub, expanded edition from the early 2000s, credited to the Ossie All-Stars, just another name for the Revolutionaries band at Channel 1, but indicating again a strong level of involvement from Ossie Hibbert in the tracks making up the Mr. Isaacs album. And this includes 7 out of 10 of those tracks, expanded edition with some bonus cuts. And in the fashion of the African Dub Almighty dub series of LPs that were coming out from Joe Gibbs around that time, this would feature heavy overdubs of sound effects, with Doberman Skank in particular, the original vocal of one of the Gregory Isaacs tracks, dubbed up and overlaid with a repetitive barking dog sound effects. Gets a bit distracting and jarring from the music. But Ossie Hibbert, Lego Dub, his 4th dub LP, that's also been reissued in its original form through VP in more recent years. Through the late 1970s, Ossie Hibbert would continue to produce music at a high rate, forming new labels, sometimes in conjunction with overseas distributors, such as the UK-based sound system operator Lord Coos, who would issue Cornell Campbell's Chain Gang, backed with Know Your Roots on the Lord Coos label in the UK, but produced by Ossie Hibbert in Jamaica, most likely. Ossie Hibbert seeming to have a strong affinity for great Jamaican vocalists. Cornell Campbell would also do one of my very favorite tunes for Ossie Hibbert, one of my favorites by Cornell Campbell from a long time, Mash You Down, supremely confident, and issued on the Ossie and Coos label in conjunction with Lord Coos, produced by Ossie Hibbert, longtime favorite of mine, showing the influence of Ossie Hibbert on my music collection before I was really even too aware of him. In fact, the very first vintage reggae record I ever bought, I always thought was a Joe Gibbs production, may actually have been an Ossie Hibbert production. The very first old reggae record I ever bought, before I even had a turntable, Joe Gibbs 12-inch of singer Pat Kelly doing It's a Good Day. Can still remember playing this for the first time. I had to pull my parents' old stereo system in the basement out, hook it up for one last time. It was on its last legs, but I just had to hear what this record sounded like. I've shown this before in previous videos. Absolutely one of my all-time favorite tunes, and tellingly, it also appeared on Ossie Hibbert's Earthquake label. I had always assumed it to be a Joe Gibbs production in my early years. May actually have been an Ossie Hibbert tune. Ossie Hibbert would also work with the singer Errol Dunkley, here doing Sit and Cry on the Ossie and Koos label. Errol Dunkley would have a big hit in the late 1970s with OK Fred, cover of a John Holt song. That song also may likely have been produced by Ossie Hibbert, a major chart hit that I think hit number 11 on the UK pop charts. The hits continued to rack up for Ossie Hibbert through the late 1970s, often working with singularly talented vocalists, and perhaps the pinnacle of his career would be reached in 1979, the same year he put out that Gregory Isaacs meets Ronnie Davis LP, would see the release of Freddie McKay's Creation. Highly sought after album, just recently reissued by VP, and again on that Ossie Hibbert Earthquake label, Ossie Hibbert production of the singer Freddie McKay, who seemed to imbue a certain part of his soul, his personality in each song he sang, a certain sense of melancholy often present in his vocals. Creation, the title track, a cover of the Burning Spear classic, Creation Rebel, as well as some original songs. Lullaby Woman, I believe, also appeared as a single on an Ossie Hibbert related album. Classic showcase style album from Freddie McKay with vocals followed by dubs. The 1980s dawned, Ossie Hibbert would continue producing, sometimes for his own labels, sometimes in arrangements with other producers. A non-album track, to the best of my knowledge, by the Mighty Diamonds would appear on the Thunderbolt label. Let the Dollars Circulate by the Mighty Diamonds, with DJ Toast by Trinity appearing on the Thunderbolt label. Lord Shelley sound system copy there, and produced by Ossie Hibbert. The Thunderbolt label would also see Ebony Eyes by the Tamlins, vocal group the Tamlins, produced by Ossie Hibbert again, in association with Sonic Sounds. Carlene Davis, female singer, would have a hit with Stealing Love on the Side. That one must have been quite a big hit. I found it a number of times, and produced by Ossie Hibbert and Willie Lindo, appearing on the Sonic Sounds label. As the reggae turned digital in the mid-1980s, Ossie Hibbert adapted to the times, releasing co-production with Christopher Chin on the Brand X label, great singer Sugar Minot with Lickshot, digital cut, Quaker sound system copy this time. Sounds mid-1980s to me. Ossie Hibbert would continue producing unabated through the 1990s and into the early 2000s. He had plans to write a book. Reportedly, he would joke that he was holding back his best stories from interviewers in order to write his own book with his longtime friends Robbie Shakespeare and Sly Dunbar. Unfortunately, on July 1st, 2012, after attending a Beres Hammond show in New York, he passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack, cutting short the stories he no doubt could have told, and leaving us as fans of the music to figure out on our own the extent of his true contribution to Jamaican music, which by any reckoning is significant. This has been my look at Ossie Hibbert. Hope you enjoyed, everybody. Thanks for watching.